Dan Dickau here on the WCC Weekly for the Gonzaga Nation Media Network. Another unbelievable week in the WCC. I know I keep saying that. It sounds like a broken record, but lots of fireworks, lots of great performances, lots of down to the wire contests this past week. Figured instead of going standings and then results, I was just going to recap Thursday and recap Saturday really quick before we talk player of the week, my player of the week, the team of the week, and then standings and then games to look for this week that have significance. So Thursday was a heck of a week, or a heck of a night of games. Gonzaga got back on track against Santa Clara. Anton Watson was awesome. 18 points, a perfect 8 of 8 from the field. Carlos Stewart gave the Broncos everything he could to kind of challenge Gonzaga, but in the end, it was an 88-70 win for Gonzaga, which ended up setting up a big-time showdown, which we'll talk about in a minute, against St. Mary's. We'll talk more about that later this week when Adam Morrison and I get together on Gonzaga Nation SI. But big win for Gonzaga on Thursday. They needed it to keep pace leading into Saturday's game against St. Mary's. But St. Mary's, they won a tough one at home against USF. It was a game where USF never gave in. They were in it till late. And then the experience and the moxie of St. Mary's was able to make the big plays down the stretch. BYU looks like they're back on track. They smacked LMU to protect their home court. They lost to Gonzaga at home in the final seconds. They lost at the buzzer to St. Mary's. LMU has been kind of fighting for that third place spot. BYU wants to get back to third place, which is pretty much been their home for the last couple of years in the league, and it looked like they're getting back in that spot. But they protected home court, which was big for them. Pacific continues their surprising run in WCC play. Now they're tied for 5th in the WCC, yet they've got the worst net ranking in the league. USD's even higher, Pepperdine's even higher, but Pacific's net rankings in the 200s. So it shows you a little bit about, they didn't play a very tough non-conference. They struggled in non-conference, but they played really well in the conference. Portland over USD 80-61 on Thursday. So a good slate of games on Thursday, but really it was kind of the main event leading up to Saturday, where there was a lot of movement. There was a lot of great games. BYU beat Pacific 81-68. So as I mentioned, BYU's basically had a lock on third place the last few years in the league, and they've struggled at times this year, but good week for them, getting them back on track, winning both. Santa Clara bounced back after that loss to Gonzaga by getting a good road win in San Francisco, 83-70. USF's kind of the team that's surprised me a little bit. A tremendous non-conference, including a good win against ranked at the time Arizona State. They played a good non-conference schedule, but they just haven't been able to close games out or put together any type of consistency in league play. USD over LMU 87-79. So that's the struggle right there for LMU. They show tons of progress. They show tons of growth, show tons of execution in knocking off Gonzaga. And you're starting to talk about, hey, are they a legitimate third place type team? And then they lose 2 this week. The one we mentioned at BYU, which is a hard place to play at. And then they lose to USD 87-79. So that has got to get righted for LMU. They got a good week coming up, and we'll actually touch on that because they're focused in 2 of my upcoming games to keep an eye on for this week in the WCC. Maybe the craziest finish I've seen all year in the league, maybe in the country, was the Portland at Pepperdine game. Pepperdine won 94-93 in overtime. There was a foul call. There was a scrum for a rebound with under a second left to go. Led to what looked like a jump ball. A Portland player kind of tried to wrestle the ball away after the jump ball was called. The officials, because it looked like there was contact made with elbow above the neck area, officials called a technical foul. And so at this moment in time, with the technical foul, for the Portland player, a technical foul also was assessed for the Pepperdine player. So they both shot 2 free throws. For the Portland player made 1 of 2. The Pepperdine player made 1 of 2. So there's 0.6 seconds left on the clock. So it's a 1-point lead for the University of Portland. But because of the technical foul, the ball goes back to Pepperdine, and it goes back to Pepperdine on their baseline. So they have a baseline out of bounds with 0.6 seconds left. With that 0.6 seconds left, they run a nice baseline out of bounds play. A lot of times in this situation, most teams are going to switch. They'll keep their bigger player underneath so that they can protect the rim. Well, Pepperdine ran kind of a misdirection with 2 guys on the opposite side running out towards the 3-point line instead of setting a screen. And then Javon Porter had a size advantage over Tyler Robertson underneath the rim. They throw it up over the top, catching and finish all in one motion for a basket at the buzzer to end up winning. The description doesn't do it justice. You would have to watch the video and how this whole scenario played out. I thought it was a terrible call on the double technical. The fact that both teams had it. It was interesting to me how the ball was put on the baseline out of bounds for Pepperdine. I would love clarification on the ruling as to why that was. But at the end of the day, Pepperdine executed a great baseline out of bounds play, and they were able to come out on top with a win for their first win in conference play. I've said this before. They've got talent. They just haven't been able to put they haven't been able to put any of it together. So for Pepperdine, that was great to see they get their first league win. But disappointing for Portland because they've started to play much better as of late. But the main event on Saturday, as everybody knows, St. Mary's hosting Gonzaga, and St. Mary's, if you don't know by now, they came on top with a win in overtime, 78-70. If you don't know that result by now, you either haven't followed college basketball or you don't follow the WCC and Gonzaga at all. One of the best played college basketball games I've seen all year, whether it's in person calling it or watching on TV. Watched it on TV, but Gonzaga looked great through most of the game. And they even looked good in the stretches where St. Mary's came back. St. Mary's is just such a good team. You can't expect them to fold. You can't expect, with them being down 7-8 points midway through the second half that they're going to give in. They're too good of a basketball team. They're going to keep fighting you on the defensive end, making things difficult at some point because they've got enough talent. They're going to find a way to score. And they found a way to score with Aiden Mahaney. Mahaney, the freshman from right around the corner of St. Mary's College, he grew up right in that area. His high school is about 3 minutes away from St. Mary's campus, but struggled in the first half, but in the second half, he really got it going, and down the stretch, he was best player on the floor that night. He had a hand in either scoring or getting assist on 19 of the last 21 points for St. Mary's. He did bank in a 3, which I'm sure some fans are going to say, hey, but he banked in a 3. But you know what? He had the guts. He had the willingness to take big shots. He made big shots. He had a couple big-time finishes where they're one-handed scoops, right hand. I think he had 2 at the left down the stretch. He had a tremendous pass down low to, I think it was Mitchell Saxon, who also had a good game, 18 points when his penetration was cut off. But what more can you say about him? For Gonzaga, they played well. But I think, the fact is St. Mary's is a damn good basketball team. There is no reason St. Mary's should have been ranked 18 going into that game, and Gonzaga should have been 12. I think being ranked 12 to 15-ish was right for Gonzaga going in. I mean, I think, all things said, I think Gonzaga will probably be ranked around the 18 to 20 mark when the new rankings come out on Monday. But St. Mary's, hopefully they start getting some of the credit from the national voters. They watch this Gonzaga game and they start realizing how they've been wrong with the rankings and how they view St. Mary's. Because I think St. Mary's is definitely at this moment in time a top 12-ish, top 10 maybe team, especially in a year where it's so wide open in college basketball. There is no clear cut this team's going to the Final Four, because you see this past week the amount of ranked teams that lost. Once again, the previous week there was an amazing amount of ranked teams that lost. This week there was an amazing group of ranked teams that lost. Tennessee ranked number 2. They squeak out a win against Auburn, which they shouldn't have, with a terrible non-call. Purdue ranked number 1 goes to Indiana, loses. There's just so much parity in college basketball this year that I think St. Mary's has been overlooked. People haven't really watched or looked closely at what they do and how they're doing it. But I would hope for the WCC's sake that they start getting a little bit more recognition, because I think both them and Gonzaga are second weekend teams in the NCAA tournament. So for Gonzaga, back to the drawing board as far as just working on working on what has made them good over the last 20 some years. Focus on the high low, taking care of the basketball, finding pick and roll opportunities, getting out in transition. Those are all the things that are focal points, and those will continue to be focal points. But hats off to St. Mary's. They've made it really hard on Gonzaga now to be able to extend their streak of 10 straight WCC titles, being 2 games back with 4 weeks left. They're going to need some help, and they're going to need somebody to knock off LMU, and then it's going to set up the last regular season game of the year, February 25th at Gonzaga, for an absolutely incredible game. I think that's going to happen. I think somebody's going to knock off St. Mary's, and we're going to see a title game on February 25th, McCarthy Athletic Center. So my player of the week, that's easy, Aiden Mahaney. I had said this a few weeks ago after I had seen him in person when I called a game, LMU at St. Mary's. He's the real deal. He's now starting to get a lot of people nationally that are saying the same thing, but he's a pretty dang good player. Team of the week, I'm going to go with BYU. They won 2 games to keep themselves in the conversation for 3rd place. And remember, 3rd and 4th are important because you get a bye at the WCC tournament in Vegas. The games that I'm looking forward to this week, the upcoming games, St. Mary's at LMU. I think this could be a game where I mentioned somebody's got to knock off St. Mary's. I think it could be LMU. LMU played them tough in Moraga a few weeks back. LMU's coming off a disappointing week. I'm sure Stan Johnson is going to have their attention, and they're going to be ready to go. And you've seen them play really well earlier this year. They beat Gonzaga in Spokane. So that's a game to keep an eye out. The other one would be for LMU to keep pace, trying to stay in 3rd place, would be their Saturday game at Santa Clara, because Santa Clara is coming on strong. They got beat by Gonzaga, but then they beat a solid San Francisco team on the road. And then the last one to really keep an eye on is BYU at Gonzaga Saturday. BYU would love some retribution for that final minutes loss to Gonzaga at home. So that would be a game to keep an eye out on as well Saturday. But again, here's the standings. St. Mary's at 10-0, Gonzaga 8-2, LMU and BYU 6-5, BYU Pacific at 5-5, the Pilots of Portland and USF, as well as the Toreros 4-7, and Pepperdine sitting at 1-10. So a few weeks left in the season. It's been an awesome run so far in the WCC, and I don't expect anything to change. Don't go anywhere for your Gonzaga content and coverage. Follow us, Gonzaga Nation SI. Like, subscribe, and review. got lots of good stuff coming up this week. Adam Morrison and I will talk about and the St. Mary's game, what he saw from courtside, some of the things that maybe could get looked at to be tweaked and or fixed, and what the prospects look like for Gonzaga to climb back and win another conference title. So appreciate you checking it out, and we will connect soon.